I'm shooting this on January 17th. You can probably tell in my voice I'm still getting over my sinus infection. It just occurred to me that we had gone out to Texas and Oklahoma for Christmas and came back New Year's weekend, New Year's Eve, in fact. And I just realized I've been sick that entire time since then. Came back New Year's weekend, had a cold, and it's just been getting progressively worse. And finally now it's starting to turn around, but I think it's still going to take me another few days to recover. So if you're wondering why I've not gotten a lot done in January, I've pretty much been sick the whole time. Anyway, I've done a video sometime in the past, a vlog sometime in the past, talking about the different knives that I use. But I got a question this week on one of the videos that I've done in the past about applying decals to a model. And somebody was asking, because I all the time use my hobby knives to move my decals around, and the guy said, how do you do that without tearing your decals apart? And I don't recall having ever talked about kind of the way I handle my knife blades. Now, just kind of a brief refresher, I keep one that's my primary knife, and I put a little milliput here on the end to keep it from rolling around. And then I've got this kind of angled one that is good for cutting photo etch and other things. When I used to use that stuff, I no longer use photo etch. But that one's, and it's also good for scraping things off and all that. So that's a good one to have. This chisel blade is also very good to have, but I don't use those very often. And I've got this shiny blue handle hobby knife here. Now the difference between these two, most of the time when I'm working, I use a very dull blade. I don't use a fresh blade in my hobby knife. Very rarely do I do that. What I tend to do is just keep using the same blade over and over, and I'm fine that it gets dull, because what I've found over the years is that there's very rarely a case that I need a super sharp blade in my knife. If I'm cutting decals, if I'm cutting canopy masking, yeah, that's where I want a super sharp blade. But generally when I'm scraping seams, when I'm cutting nubs off of things, when I'm shaving stuff down, when I'm putting in, restoring a panel line, it's actually better to have, in my opinion, it's actually better to have a less than sharp blade, something that's a little dull. I can actually have more control over that than I can over one that's very sharp. One that's very sharp is going to get away from you very quickly. You're going to cut your fingers all up. But if it's more dull, it takes a little more work, but I find I have much better control over it. I even like it when sometimes the tip will break off and I get that little squared off edge right there. I actually like that. There's times that, because you'll see on this newer one, well, this may be a different kind of blade, but most of them go to a very sharp tip. But when they break off like that, I actually prefer that, because that end is very useful in restoring panel lines and just doing things like that. The back of the knife is also really useful for seam scraping and stuff like that. But anyway, and getting the original question, when it comes to moving my decals around, having a dull blade really helps with that. It also helps that if the surface on the model is very wet, so that it slides around. But I'm a big fan of letting my knife blades get really dull and working with them a long time, and only having another knife for my fresh blades to do the things that really require a fresh blade. Because like I said, in my opinion, most things don't need a fresh blade.